Glad you are here. And I do want to introduce myself because I don't want to assume that everyone knows who I am. I'm the director of Cokesbury Students. So if you are not actively involved in student ministry, maybe our paths haven't crossed. But instead of me telling you about myself, I'm going to allow my 6-year-old daughter to do that. So shout out to my wife for keeping this gym. She made this in school. She just finished kindergarten, but my wife kept this until Father's Day, and I got to read it. So we're going to share a few things about me through the eyes of my 6-year-old. So there it is. As you can see, to begin, I am the best dad. So thank you. Shout out to me for that one. My wife kept the paper, but I earned the title. That's how this works. My name is Joshua, that she wrote that on the thing. Interesting choice to use my government name on this paper, but okay. She got it right. She's not wrong. I'm 38. My daddy is 38 years old, and that is also correct. Earlier this year, on a Wednesday night, I shared that I was born in 1985. And there was a middle schooler sitting on the front row and goes, "Oh, that's the same year my mom was born. That's weird." And I was like, yeah, I am processing that one too, my man. We used to be a lot closer in age, you and I. The seats of the people before you. This is according to my daughter. Her favorite memory of her dad is when his hair was long. And in my age, I'm also missing my hair more than in previous years. So I guess we share that memory, probably for different reasons. She says that my favorite thing to eat, and she drew a cup from Tropical Smoothie. My girl knows me, okay? She knows that if Daddy wants to go out to eat Tropical Smoothie, it's going to be on the list of recommendations. And finally, this one, to be honest, this one kind of felt like a setup. But she said, my dad's pockets are full of money. It's true. We are absolute ballers at the Target dollar spot. I'm not going to lie to you. We walk into Five Below, and I said, "Young queen, everything you want can be yours." So yeah. I mean, what's she supposed to put here? Cheese? What are my pockets full of? I don't know. To her, my pockets are full of money, but strangely, I never have 50 cents to buy her one of those bouncy balls. So it is what it is. And I'm very sorry I could not wear that outfit for you today. Partly because I do not own rainbow shoes. But the shirt was kind of fire, so maybe I'll add that to the repertoire. But enough about me. I want to tell you more about people that I know that I get to hang out with here at Cokesbury Student Ministry. It's been an incredible year. The 22-23 year for Cokesbury students was absolutely incredible. It was some of the most fun I've ever had. Full stop. We're not going to quantify that statement or qualify that statement within student ministry. It was just a great year. It was awesome. It was all the words. It was fun. It was everything. It starts in August when we welcome in a brand new wave of 5th grade students. And if that's your family this year, go ahead and circle August 6th. That's a Sunday where everybody kind of bumps up. And August 6th, welcome to the show. It's going to be great. This past year, our students have served both of our campuses multiple times by greeting people, by serving communion, and helping to lead services. Every January, we send our 7th and 8th graders to Pigeon Forge for a wonderful weekend at Resurrection. And I brought a picture of the crew for that one. There they are. Look at them. Okay, thank you. Just before Easter, we celebrate a new group of confirmation students who are ready to take their next step in their faith by joining the church, by getting baptized, or by publicly sharing that their relationship with Jesus is in fact deeply personal. At Christmas, we will wear pajamas and we will eat pancakes before gathering for a candlelit singing of Silent Night. If you've ever seen that moment, you know how sweet and tender it can be. To kick off a new calendar year, we'll have a silent disco. And as the name suggests, it's a total rager. We'll find time to play putt-putt, we'll go bowling, and at some point we'll pick a Wednesday for everyone to wear a Hawaiian shirt to church, because why wouldn't we do that? That just sounds fun. This past winter, we called on students to collect items to support our friends at Fig Tree. Sleeping bags, blankets, deodorants, and socks were some of the items requested. Not only did our students meet every goal that was set, but they doubled the requested amount of nearly every category in the process. In the spring, we asked students to provide supplies for a project we helped with for students in Zimbabwe. And again, our students delivered. This year, we learned that the generosity of our students and their families is, in fact, elite. On the third Wednesday of every month, you can watch a worship service begin with two people dressed in banana suits, absolutely losing their minds, dancing around and throwing candy into a crowd. If you've ever wondered what weird and wonderful looked like, I'll be happy to introduce you to a grown man dressed as a banana doing the Running Man to a techno beat while throwing a fun-sized Twix at a 12-year-old. It's a sight that honestly kind of makes time slow down. Like, did I just give this guy permission to do that? We did. To celebrate the end of the school year, we took possibly our greatest creative risk ever. And we hired an Elvis tribute artist to put on a concert in this very room. Look at this guy. Yeah, that's real. It was an idea that I thought would be kind of funny, that it turned out to be one of those nights where you go home and your face is sore from smiling and laughing for so long. And there's actually a group photo of our staff with Elvis, and look how happy we are. You cannot fake that. That man's name is Eli Williams, and he has a theater in Pigeon Forge, and he is 110% pure electricity on the stage. And if the idea of bringing Elvis into church causes some suspicious minds, hang on, because there's more. If the idea of bringing Elvis into church causes some suspicious minds, then, my brothers and sisters in Christ, I'm sorry to say, but you ain't nothing but a hound dog. And maybe we should have a little less conversation. And you can head over to youtube.com/Cokesbury Students and watch 16 minutes of pure magic for yourself, because it's there. We put a lot of energy into creating memorable retreats, and this year was no exception. Our 56th retreat in May was maybe the best one I've ever been a part of. Not only do the students buy into what is happening in front of them, but so do the adults. It's so inspiring and refreshing to see moms and dads completely engaged with our student ministry and having fun and worshiping with their kids. 56 proves that a life with young students is not a problem to solve. A life with young students is a beautiful mystery to behold. In June, we took a group of nearly 60 high school students and volunteers to the beach for our annual beach retreat, and it was 100% incredible. Students shared their stories. They welcomed new friends into their circles. They strengthened existing relationships. They worshiped Jesus beside one another with a passion and a joy that I've never seen before. It was contagious. We use the words kindness, compassion, and curiosity as a cultural message, as a cultural rallying cry to talk about what we want this place to be and the type of people we want to be. Those cultural standards were on display through the lives of teenagers for 5 straight days. I believe that we have a group of students that exhibit the values of kindness, compassion, and curiosity so often and so regularly that it can no longer be a coincidence. I think that's just who they are. And what a beautiful place it is when they're here. While we were at the beach, our Holston Conference held their annual conference at Lake Junaluska. As part of that event, every year they honor one clergy person, they honor one lay person, they honor one youth within the whole conference. So that's Southwest Virginia all the way down to just south of Chattanooga. To honor them with the Denman Evangelism Award. That's an award given to an individual whose life brings others into a transforming relationship with Christ through their word, their sign, and their deed. And this year's youth honor went to our very own Kate Ford. Yes. We are so proud of her, and I've known Kate since she was in 7th grade, and no one is more deserving of that. And this is just an incredible honor. So if you're wondering if this is the equivalent to like the Heisman Trophy for like youth evangelism, yes, it is. And if you think that I will not put that on my resume in the future, then you are wrong, because I definitely already have. And if you are thinking about joining this place, just know that I could coach your child to number one. I'm just kidding. I need to find a way to talk about this without it being a recruiting pitch, and I'm not quite there yet. We're very proud of Kate. If Kate gave me 1% of the credit for who she is, that would be far too much, because she is just a wonderful young woman and a wonderful family, and it's just been an honor to know them. But by far, we have to talk about this, by far the coolest thing we did this year happened in May. It was better than Elvis, it was better than a retreat, it was better than an award, I think, because we have partnered, Cokesbury Student Ministry has partnered with our Cokesbury Counseling Center. For so long, the Counseling Center has made great strides to make mental health care accessible and available for our church and our community. We love who they are, we love what they do, but there's also a very obvious need for mental health care in students today. So in May, we decided to pledge a portion of what has been financially given to us to the Counseling Center, so that any Cokesbury student can schedule an appointment and it only costs them $25. Thank you. Through this partnership, we want mental health care for students to be not only available and accessible, but it also needs to be affordable. If money is what's keeping our students from taking care of themselves mentally, then we have to eliminate that hurdle. And for us, that extends even to their friends, because I consider that a win. If you trust our church enough to recommend to your friend to come to our counseling center, then yes, that is a win. So if you want to know more about how we are working with the Counseling Center, if you want to know more about student mental health care, please, let's have a conversation about that. And we can do that today. We don't need to wait. We can get the ball rolling. I can tell you how it works. It's a wonderful, beautiful thing, and we are excited to partner with them because, man, we can do a lot of things, but we have to take care of our minds, and we have to take care of our brains, and we have to start taking care of ourselves so that we can love other people better. And this is just a beautiful place to start. Thank you. Also, before we wrap up this portion, I just want to mention the names of Manna Purushottam, Joshua Stuckey, Josh Cottrell, Sydney Stinnett, Logan Sexton, Paul Coley, for working so hard to make this whole thing work. You not only are immensely talented in what you do, but you are far more committed to loving well. And I thank you for who you are, what you do, and what you give to student ministry. So that's our staff. They're awesome, incredible. And I could fill all of our time together today telling you stories and talking about student ministry, about how much I love it, about how much I love these young people. But we're going to get into our summer reading series. And we've been in the book of John. We've been looking at Jesus' I am statements. And I really enjoy reading John. John is different stylistically than the other Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And that I think John's very conversational. You know, the other three write in a style that's kind of events-based and events-focused. It's almost like they're just kind of following Jesus around and writing down the things that happen. Where, you know, I think John is much more of a guy sitting under a shade tree that just kind of invites you over. It's just like, hey, let me tell you a story about this guy. John is like real, almost laid back when compared to the other three. John doesn't cover the birth of Jesus or his young life. John, who many consider to be one of Jesus' best friends, is all about the adult age ministry of Jesus. John will not only tell you a story about Jesus, but then he'll give you a report about how people responded to him. John only writes about seven miraculous signs that Jesus performed, and even at the end of his book, he tells you, hey, look, if there were so many things that this guy did, that if I wrote all of them down, I don't think the world's big enough to contain a library of books that big. When we read John, we can get a really good look at who Jesus was when he was with his people. We get to see both the ministry of and the one who was both fully God and fully man. So we're going to pick up today's reading in John 10, verses 11 through 21. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd sacrifices his life for the sheep. A hired hand will run when he sees a wolf coming. He will abandon the sheep because they don't belong to him, and he isn't their shepherd. And so the wolf attacks them and scatters the flock. The hired hand runs away because he's working only for the money and doesn't really care about the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own sheep, and they know me, just as the Father knows me and I know the Father. So I sacrifice my life for the sheep. I have other sheep too that are not in this sheepfold. I must bring them also. They will listen to my voice, and there will be one flock with one shepherd. The Father loves me because I sacrifice my life so I may take it back again. No one can take my life from me. I sacrifice it voluntarily. For I have the authority to lay it down when I want to and also take it up again. For this is what my Father has commanded. And when he said these things, the people were again divided in their opinions about him. Some said, he's demon-possessed and out of his mind. Why listen to a man like that? And others said, this doesn't sound like a man possessed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? To better understand the weight of what John has written about here, it helps to go back to the Old Testament, and to Ezekiel 34. And when we get to Ezekiel 34 and learn about who Ezekiel was, we know that he was a priest and a prophet, and I think it's fair to say kind of a weird dude. Even though we don't know much about him personally, like we know Ezekiel, but we don't know Ezekiel. But what we can learn from the writings is that we see God as someone who did not want to be vague. God did not want to be far away from his people. We know through Ezekiel that God wanted people to know him. More than that, Ezekiel's God wanted to live with his people, to make his home in the center of their city. So when we get to Ezekiel chapter 34, the chapter starts with God really giving it to the leaders of Israel. He's denouncing them as false shepherds and only looking out for themselves. The leaders of that day ate well. They were well clothed. They were well cared for by the people they were placed over to protect. The people, or the sheep in this story, are described as weak, sick, injured, or lost. When we get to verse 11, God says this in Ezekiel 34, I myself will search and find my sheep. I will be like a shepherd looking for his scattered flock. I will find my sheep and rescue them. And then a few verses later, he would say beautiful things like he will tend and guide and lie them down for rest. He will find the lost and bring back the strays. He will be healing the injured and strengthening the weak. Through Ezekiel, we get a really good glimpse of a God that wants to be with his people. But through John, we get a really good glimpse of how Jesus was with his people. If we're still in Ezekiel 34, we get to verse 23, and we learn that God intends to place one shepherd over his people, his servant David. David will be that one shepherd. But interestingly, when this was written, David had already been dead for 450 years. So to set the scene again, we have a weird prophet being used by God so that God can be with his people, they can know more about him, and God has decided he's going to appoint David, still dead, as their shepherd. But if you are a student of biblical genealogy, and honestly, who among us here does not love a good long list of names? You know that we can trace the line of David all the way to Jesus. So when we get to John's writings and we see and read Jesus say, I am the good shepherd, Jesus isn't giving himself a new title. He's fulfilling a promise. Since the Old Testament, God has longed to be with his people because the leaders in charge of taking care of God's people were not loving well. God loved us so much that there had to be a better way. And part of keeping that promise was to give the sheep a new shepherd. I think it's a beautiful illustration of the shepherd knowing the sheep, and in turn the sheep knowing the voice of the shepherd. Even if we just take that literally and don't use it as a metaphor, it's this beautiful connection between two living beings that just kind of recognize one another. I like to watch nature shows, and I've found that like when penguins go hunting, the women, mind you, okay, doing the hard work of keep this home together, they come back from a long journey to find that stay-at-home dad and her baby in a sea of other tuxedo-wearing flightless birds. And then the mother immediately just throws up in the baby's mouth. It's just nature doing its thing. Or if there's like a large flock of birds that have all nested on a cliff, the mother can sort through like thousands of birds, find her baby who's just squawking its little lungs out, and then immediately regurgitate into that baby's mouth. Nature's so beautiful that way. Even out in the ocean, we know that orcas are now teaching their young how to take down massive boats in open water. They're even gathering in large groups off the coast of California to communicate what I think will be a well-orchestrated plan. I had to. I'm very sorry. I would like to apologize. It was sitting there. I don't have the part in my brain that's just like, don't use that pun. Part of my job, being a dad, I'm sorry. But nature is beautiful. But also, sidebar, the ocean is a terrifying place. You're telling me that covers 75% of the world and we only know 20% of what's in it? No, thank you. I think it's even biblical to not like the ocean because we read stories about Jesus walking on the water, not him swimming in it. Think about that. It is Christ-like to remain on the surface. He saw what his dad put in there. He didn't jump in. And even as humans, we're quick to recognize voices and tones from people we have a relationship with or are especially close to. Maybe you have a parent or a partner that says your name in a certain way that causes you to spin around. If you've ever been lost in a crowd or looking for a friend in a crowded room and heard your name pierce through a mass of people, maybe even got that hand way above just waving. And there's something nice about being seen by someone who's been searching. If you're a parent, you know that connection can be even more intimate and special. Just the other day, I was picking up my son. He's like 19, 20 months old. He's a year and a half, okay? I was picking him up from daycare, and I heard his voice through just a gaggle of children as he came running to me. The way he says, Dada, I find unmistakable. I stop, and I immediately start looking for him. He's running as fast as he can. His smile on his face is as wide as his arms are from his body because he runs like this for some reason. I don't know. Still working on that. But I meet him, and I pick him up. I'm trying to match his energy for this moment. We hug. I tell him to give me a squeeze. He doesn't, but he'll still go, I don't know. He pulls back. We make this intense eye contact like two friends who just haven't seen each other in years. We're just having such a moment. And then, the way nature's beautiful design works, he sneezes directly into my mouth. I'm not a big evolution guy, but I've seen enough nature shows to watch baby birds and go, I've been there, buddy. Mm-hmm. But just consider for a moment how often we measure the depth of a relationship by how well we know someone. If you think favorably of someone, you might enthusiastically say, yeah, I know them. The Buddy the Elf when Santa's name is mentioned. Oh my gosh, I know him. You get it. When you receive a gift or a suggestion that's definitely something you love, man, you just feel like that person knows who you are. But if you're familiar with someone, but not like real familiar, you might say something like, I know him, but I don't know him. Or if someone oversteps in a conversation, they might be met with a, please, you don't know me. Like we use that word to describe how our relationships are and the depth of them. And the desire to be known by another human being is part of the human experience. Not only do I crave at the core of my soul to be seen and known and loved by someone else, but that love part is huge. If people were to truly know me, I would have to give them access to everything, the good and the bad. For people to truly love me, I've got to be very vulnerable and hope that you'll love me regardless of what you see. The quest to be known can be terrifying because sometimes we think the result of being loved is dependent on what the other person may find. I like this quote from Timothy Keller a lot. I want to share it with you today. Timothy Keller writes, "To be loved but not known is comforting but superficial. To be known and not loved is our greatest fear. But to be fully known and truly loved is, well, a lot like being loved by God. It is what we need more than anything. It liberates us from pretense, humbles us out of our self-righteousness, and fortifies us for any difficulty life can throw at us." I think being fully known and truly loved is a lot like being loved by God, because that is exactly who God is. He's a God that loved you so much. If we go back to the Ezekiel passage, he decided that what was happening to his people, the sheep and those that were taking care of him, wasn't good enough anymore, and there had to be a new way. We have a God that loves you so much that he decided there's got to be a better way. We're going to do things differently. There's going to be one flock. There's going to be one people gathered from all over the place. And God kept his promise to love the sheep that are already in the flock. God kept his promise to pursue and rescue the ones that are lost. God kept his promise to work on and heal the ones that are sick and injured and hurting. God kept his promise to make a better way for his people to know him more deeply. God kept his promise to build a relationship with his people, not just in the center of their city, but in the center of their lives. And he did it through the one who comes and says, "I am the good shepherd." And that is the same one that proudly says, "I know you." We are loved and we are known because that is who God is. Not only do we get to be fully known and fully loved by God, but we're invited to get to know him. Through Jesus, we don't get a glimpse of a God that was wanting to be with his people, but through Jesus, we see the way God chose to be with his people, to be one of them. Through Jesus, we can see a future. We can feel loved and feel known, and we can rest in the hope that has never failed. I mentioned it earlier, but I think one of the coolest parts about John is that he often includes the response of the crowds in his storytelling. And even at the end of this passage, it's still two groups that are arguing their opinions of Jesus. And one group thinks that he's a maniac and he's just crazy, and the other one's just like, I don't know. Like, do crazy people, like, do they heal the blind? Like, do they do what he does? I love that idea of, like, there's a little bit of hope even in the midst of some frustration. That there's light where there's darkness. I like that John includes the crowd's response to Jesus because that is what the gospel requires of us, a response. This is the good shepherd. He knows the sheep and the sheep know his voice, but the question has to become, are we listening? Are we going back to the times of Ezekiel and we're just kind of taking care of ourselves and we're ignoring the hardships and the suffering around us? We're looking the other way. Or are we listening to a God that's actively pursuing you so that we can know him more? The gospel requires a response, and we have to decide if we're listening or not. Are we listening to a Savior who lived the human experience, who died a criminal's death, who defeated death, and came back to remind everyone that he is the way to life, and he is the one who loves you, he is the one who knows you, he is the one who sees you, and he is the one who counts you among the worthy. Jesus counts you among those who are invited into a new way of living, and the gospel requires a response to the question, are we listening? I hope, as a member of this community and as many friends are in this room and watching, that we are a people that are listening to God. A God that says, I see you, I know you, I value you, and we hope we're listening to a God that says, I love you. Because that is who the Good Shepherd is. Will you pray with me as we close? Gracious God, we thank you for today. Just the sense of gratitude is overwhelming and overflowing for the one who calls himself the Good Shepherd. God, thank you for seeing us, for loving us, for counting us among the worthy. And for that we say, thank you and amen.